So I'm still figuring this all out. Hopefully it goes pretty smoothly. All right. Okay, so first of all, the whole point of this is to have fun. I was kind of nervous about doing this, even though, so I lived in Tuscany was my home for several years, Florence in particular, and I was a wine tour guide there into Chianti Classico and Chianti Colli Fiorentini. And I was a little nervous, I feel a little rusty. And then I had my first course today with the instructor at noon. And I thought, oh, I could teach that class. So now I feel way better about it and I'm way more relaxed and it's gonna go fine. So I'm excited to get started. I have a little thing to show you as we start here. I'm gonna share my screen and go to this. So we're gonna take a little trip into Tuscany and talk more about Chianti Classico. So when we look at Tuscany, we're looking at central Italy. It's the northern part of central Italy. We have a lot going on here in terms of topography and climate. So we have a long western coast along two different seas, the Ligurian Sea here in the north and the Tyrrhenian Sea here in the south. Tuscany does have a nice little archipelago. Elba is the largest island of the 7 islands there, and it has beautiful Mediterranean climate all year long. I went there for the first time 2 years ago, and when I get bored, it's one of the places that I like to just hop on and look for property just for fun. So highly recommend it, and some really unique wines. When we go inland into Tuscany, this map specifically highlights the different winemaking zones. So you can see Chianti Classico here in the middle, and that lies right between Florence and Siena. What we have here, topography-wise, is the northern border of Tuscany is all mountains. These are the Apennine Mountains that come across the north and down to the eastern side. And Tuscany overall is really more than 85% hills and mountains combined. So we have high mountains here in the north and east where we have cooler temperatures in the winter, especially. We can even get snow here in the hills. And then we have a lot of hills. This is all very hilly area through central Tuscany, all the way down to these really small kind of coastal plains that we find down here. Especially in this area of Grosseto. We have some plains and some farmland here. Soil climate wise, you know, y'all can tell me how technical we need to get into this stuff and going forward. But a lot of different mix of soils here. Mostly we have clay, sand, and limestone throughout. There is this rock that we find in Chianti Classico and in Montalcino called Galestro, and it's this really, it's a rock kind of easily broken down. It's schist-like that comprises a lot of the soil. So when we talk about Tuscany overall, one of the things that we have to mention is the Sangiovese grape. So Tuscany is 90% red wines. There are white grapes and there are white wines. One of the most important comes from this little area of San Gimignano. It's Vernaccia di San Gimignano. It's a very historic area with a lovely, what can be a lovely white wine. So not too many producers of straight out white wines, but there are some for sure, and they can be really great. But Sangiovese in particular is the star here, and it is often blended, though you can find 100% Sangiovese very easily as well. And in fact, on Saturday, when we look at Brunello di Montalcino, those are 100% by law Sangiovese grapes. History of Tuscany, and really Italy overall, winemaking wise. So the Etruscans were in Tuscany millennia ago. So from the 7th century BC, they were actually making and exporting wines to places like Spain and France. The Romans come along, they help viticulture, they help the trade, especially in the Roman Empire. They're taking vines and grapes to other places and really expanding on that. Then what we have in the Middle Ages is a huge downfall in winemaking practices, quality, everything just kind of goes out the window. And what we'll skip to for today, specifically talking about Chianti Classico, we're talking about a historic area known for its wines, even in the 16 and 1700s. And in fact, when we look at, I'm going to come back to this, when we look at this symbol, the Chianti Classico, the black rooster, you'll see 1716 on it. And that is because in that year, the Grand Duke Cosimo de' Medici III in Florence, he put out a bando, an edict, saying that there were 4 different protected areas around Florence that they needed to ensure quality winemaking and help protect them from fraud and things like that. And Chianti Storico, which became Chianti Classico, is one of those 4 areas. So where we go from there, and actually while we're here, I want to tell you about real quick about this black rooster. It takes that symbol because of a medieval tale. Florence and Siena were always fighting over territory, and the Florentines, to decide, you know, who was going to get this land between the 2 municipalities, they decided they would come up with a competition. And each of them designated a knight to take off from each town and meet along the road connecting the 2. They were to set off at sunrise at the crow of the rooster, and wherever they met on the road would be the border between the 2 towns. So the people in Siena chose a white rooster, and the Florentines chose a black rooster. And those tricky little Florentines, they decided to not feed their rooster for a few days leading up to this competition, so that when the morning came, it crowed real early because it was hungry. So the Florentine knight took off. He gets all the way down to just above Siena, and then the 2 knights met in that area. So Florence then takes over basically this whole zone of the Chianti Classico. So then the League of the Chianti took this symbol, the symbol of the black rooster, from there on out. So that is obviously a very brief overview. I don't want it to take up too much more time. Before we get to Emilia, I want you to learn all about Casaloste today, but I will touch on this real quick. So there are some documents on the Wine Club page that I think will help explain a little bit about Italian wine laws, but jumping to where wine gets good again is really the 1960s. Government comes in and says, we've got to do something about this so that we can compete on a global scale. So they come up with these wine laws, and the wine laws, when we look at this pyramid, a lot of people equate this to quality. And while that's somewhat true, really you have to think of it as the strictness of the laws protecting the different zones. And Emilia can, you know, chime in on this and correct me, but so the DOCG has the strictest law. This applies to a zone. So the Chianti Classico, for example, among these laws that govern that it must be at least 80% Sangiovese, it can only be up to 20% mix of other red grapes. It also says things like how often you have to prune, maximum yields you can get, aging requirements. So the whole goal of this is to protect certain zones and its traditions and the grapes that do best in those areas. So DOCG has the strictest laws for an area. DOC has very similar laws to the DOCG in terms of recipes, and the wines must be grown and pressed and made and bottled in that area. it just lacks this kind of final governmental stamp of approval, even though it does also have very strict regulations as well. IGT is a category that was introduced actually in the 90s, and this says that wines must be grown in a certain area, made in a certain area, but it has less strict rules about recipes and things like that. So this gives winemakers a lot of flexibility to play with and innovate and come up with new things. So you may have heard the term Super Tuscan. Those are some amazing, excellent wines that are actually in this IGT category, because they probably aren't 80, they may be 50% Sangiovese and 50% Cabernet, or 50% Cabernet and Merlot. So it's just really some different, gives winemakers flexibility and offers a little bit of playing around and innovating. So I'm gonna wrap up. I saw how much time I've taken up, and I didn't expect to do that. There's so many things we can talk about. We can come back to do more of like a technical dive into stuff later if people want to. For now, I'm going to go to Casaloste. This is a little video I'm gonna play. It shows their amazing grounds, and then we'll turn it over to Emilia. So here we go. Beautiful. Don't we all wish we could be there? Emilia, I now want to introduce you and let you take it from here, please.
Stanley, wonderful. That's a really great presentation. I'm so happy to be here, and welcome to everyone. It's an honor for me to be able to introduce you Casaloste, especially for those who have never been to Panzano or to visit us. Just a quick collection with that you were saying before about the area of Chianti Classico, that it just stretches between Florence and Siena. And in Chianti Classico, we are about more than about 510 members of the Chianti Classico Association. Casaloste is one of the medium small size companies It's a family-owned business. My husband is the winemaker. I'm working mostly on the marketing side and on the administration. And we are a total of our estate is 10 hectares, so quite small, 24 acres approximately, just switch over the acres. And it's just not just a simple business for us, but it's life. We are fully committed on what we do here. We live on site, we live at the property. So our days are just focused on the wines and the family as we grew our children also in here. The wines we make are just red wines, and Chianti Classico are the main, where we present the main production. The one we are introducing tonight is the Riserva that you just mentioned. It's actually Riserva, it's the category that is positioned in the middle between Classico Annata and Classico Gran Selezione. Just to give you a more precise idea of what I'm telling about, this is the, I don't know if you can see it, it's a quality pyramid that the Chianti Classico Association decided to make in order to give a clear information over the three levels of Chianti Classico. So the regular is on the base that represent the largest production of the whole territory. The Riserva is positioned in the middle, and the Gran Selezione on the peak.
And
the three.
sorry,
Yes.
and just to be clear, so that pyramid that she's showing is already within now the DOCG top level pyramid. So those are sub levels that the Chianti DOCG can be categorized into.
Yes, definitely. Actually, the category of Gran Selezione is just for Chianti Classico, because at present, no other wines in Italy have Gran Selezione. So most some have the Classico, the regular and Riservas. And this is in between the DOCG. So the pyramid that you showed before is just referred to the different type of wines made in Italy. This is just refer to Chianti Classico. And the main difference on the three is based on mainly on the aging processes. So the Classico must be aged a minimum of 12 months. Riserva goes on 2 years, 24 months, and the Gran Selezione 30 months minimum. That means that we can't release the wines before this timing. We can make it later, and it's what normally the small wineries do, because they prefer to age wine longer in order to have better quality level. Mm-hmm. So let's open the bottle. Yes. Okay. About the cork, just smelling in order to be sure that the wine is good, and definitely it is. And Riserva. So Riserva Casaloste is we are pouring the vintage 16. That is of science. As Sally mentioned before, and it's the same rule for the three categories. So no matter if it's Classico, regular, Riserva, or Gran Selezione, must be a minimum.
I'm gonna jump in real quick and see if Amelia, your video is freezing just a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, you're good now. Can you start back? So we're starting with the 2016.
Unfortunately, there's a big storm outside, so I'm a little bit worried over the connection, probably. This is vintage 16. And it's the one that we have curtain of Sangiovese with 5% of other red grapes. So the 80% is the minimum that we must have by law. If we want, we can increase the percentage of Sangiovese, getting up to 100%.
Mhm. So yeah, just to make sure everybody heard that. So they do have the minimum of 80% Sangiovese. They've chosen to go up to 95 with this one and have 5% other red grapes that are also allowed by law. They can't just use any. There are also specifics on which ones they can use to blend with the Sangiovese.
Yes, actually, the grapes that you are allowed to blend with Sangiovese can be either local varietal. The main are Colorino, Cannaiolo, Malvasia Nera, or we can also use some international varietals such as Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon. The important thing that all grapes must be grown on site. So we can't buy grapes from other, can buy grapes from another Chianti Classico producer because they are registered as Chianti Classico grapes. The the Riserva shows like a bright color. The first thing we have to see is the appearance. That means the color ruby. That means that the wine is still quite young and clear, so we can easily see our fingers, our hand on the other side. Then if you want to have the nose, just keep it still first and then swirl. That gives you the possibility to open up to oxygen a little bit the wine. And when you smell it, you can really feel the flavors, the aromas of the wines, mostly berries. It's sometimes you can find some licorice, chocolate, a little bit of toast. This is because of the aging processes. And then we can go and drink it. Is quite powerful, really nice, medium, full-bodied. It's a balance on the tannins. Tannins are a part of the red wines, but then you can have some more tannins because of the aging processes. The aging is on this wine is mostly oak. All our wines are aged in oak. We have on the Reservas only barrique. That means a standard size of 225 liters. Barrique is a French word that identifies only that specific size. The oak is very important because it might have an influence on the taste of the wine. And that's very important as well to know which type of oak you can use because it will give a special taste to your wine. We use French oak. That gives a hint of oaky taste, but not too much, in order to create the balance on the taste of the wine. Let's say that Reservas, Chianti Classico Reserva as well, made all over the area, may show completely different. This does not mean that they are good or bad wines, but basically they can be different. And the differences are because of the soil, are because of the sun exposure, are because of the altitude. But
Absolutely.
But might be.
And I jump in and now I'm interrupting you. So one thing, exactly, there are so many different producers of the Chianti Classico. And like you said, the microclimate of these different places has a huge influence on what all their different wines taste like. And there are others that you have in front of you that I think is very different from this one. But can you tell us a little bit about, and we'll talk more too, but Sangiovese in general, characteristically, it is more of a tannic, highly acidic, it's, I don't want to say aggressive, but it's known for really getting at your palate. So it's a grape that specifically is known for going with food. It's not necessarily one that you think about to just open and, you know, sit with your book and by the fire and one of those things. It is more, you know, aggressive a little bit to where you want to eat. And in fact, I cut some pecorino. I have a little aged cheese here because I have 3 different wines to taste. So I
That's
didn't
actually,
interrupt you again.
that actually a perfect matching because the Sangiovese itself, it's a type of grape that it's quite aggressive, let's say aggressive, but it's mostly sharp, quite sharp. The acidity is quite high, and also the, let's say, tannins are quite strong. So Sangiovese expresses best while aged. So we love wines when it's just young. It's nice because it's fruitier, but when it's aged like Reservas are, you can definitely feel it much better.
Mhm.
And so the best pairing for this kind of wine is cheese, like you said, or even some, or the classical T-bone steak, Toscana, the Fiorentina, or we can have it also with pasta, but with ragu, with quite a strong type of sauce that can better balance the taste of the wine. So it's a wine that can have different type of combination. Of course, you can. It's mostly up to you. I'm used to say that the most important thing is that when you drink a wine, it's because you want to enjoy. It's not just because you are obliged to drink the wine. So I'm sure there's always wine that you can find that can just match your palate or your way to make your wine.
Absolutely. And what's really fun is that, so, I mean, you have a couple different bottles there behind you. A lot of them
Yeah.
are Chianti Classicos, and yet they're very different as well. One of yours, your Annata, is what Matt and I call here, it's our everyday wine. We usually get 12 to 24 bottles of those at a time. And when we kind of just say, what do we want tonight? We like, grab a Casaloste. And so that's the one. But I did get a couple of the Riservas last time. You have Don Vincenzo, and they're all different, and they're all Chianti Classico. And that's just from one winemaker.
Yes, it's because we choose to have different wines because we have different aging processes, but also we feel that we can just fit the needs of many more people because there are those who like young wines like the Annata is, a little bit more complex like Riserva is, or get to Gran Selezione that we present the top category of the Chianti Classico. Basically also because Casaloste is family owned, we decided as well to put a very close connection on our labels to our family story. So the name Casaloste is the name of the house where we work and live. Is actually the house that we found in 1992 on our first trip to Tuscany. My husband and me are not originally from this region. We come from Napoli, from the south of Italy. And my husband studied agriculture at university. So he was dreaming to become a winemaker. And we decided to spend a holiday week here in Tuscany. And it was a particular combination of events that got us to see Casaloste that was abandoned and started the business from scratch. This was a very hard work at the beginning because there was no cellar, no running water, no electricity. But this gave us the possibility to build up the business the way we wanted. So it was also important for my husband to focus his productions on organic farming. We started organic since the very beginning. From the first harvest, it was 93. And we were considered one of the pioneers in this kind of approach, as at the time we started, organic was completely unknown, but there was even a sort of prejudice against the organic products. just to give you some numbers, some data, when we started, among the 500 producers I mentioned at the beginning, we were about 5 or 6 certified organic. Now the last data tell us that 40% of the wineries of Chianti Classico turn into organic. I'm sure that many did it because they are really convinced on the importance of organic farming, even if, of course, there can be others that they make it because it's trendy and it's probably a good selling point. I don't know. But our choice was a personal choice also to offer our children a better place to live. Moving from Napoli, that is a big city, to the countryside was the opportunity for us to offer our children a place where they could breathe in plein air and just run across the vineyards. That was the point.
Well, we saw from your video at the beginning that it's an amazing place to do that. I think we all can safely say we wish we were there right now with your fresh air in your vineyards. Looks wonderful. I've been there, I don't know, eight times, 7 times, something like that. And it's just an amazing place, and your family story is wonderful. I truly am a huge fan of your wines. So
thank you so much. I actually really wish that it will be possible in the next future to come and visit us. We are always open, and we really are happy to share our passion with the people that come by and visit us. So we are also in a beautiful spot. It's Casaloste is in Panzano. Panzano is just in the heart of the Chianti Classico territory. It's a small village. It's part of the municipality of Greve, but the village itself, it's small, cozy. We are, let's say, 1,000 people living there. Of course, we are many more when we have possibility to host tourists, but it's just a small place where you enjoy definitely wine and food. That's a really wonderful spot. I don't know if someone of your guests have already been to Panzano, but my idea is to invite everyone, when it will be possible to travel again, to Panzano and have a toast together. And for the toast, I would like my daughter to join me. My daughter is just coming into the business. She is having a good working experience in the UK, in London, and marketing. So she's helping us a lot for the socials, for Facebook, Instagram. And if you want, you can follow us on the two, because we are posting quite a lot. And then Maria Giovanna is her name. And I'm going
Hi, everyone. I was like in the background, just like listening and learning, and as usual. So I'm gonna just like count.
Actually,
here.
We have 2 wines that are the labels are referred to my sons. I have 2 more. She's the oldest, and she's the only one who doesn't have a label, because we have my son Vincenzo has his label here. Our IGT Super Tuscan, it's called Inversus, and it's dedicated to my youngest son. Inversus is a name that means reversed. And my son was born with a particular condition that shows all his organs on the opposite side of the body, but he's a healthy guy. And Maria Giovanna is the only one who doesn't have a label, but she's here with me, and I'm sure she will do a great job for our future of Casaloste.
Cheers to everyone.
Cheers to everyone.
Fabulous. Thank you. What I would love to do, if you all have a few more minutes before you go to bed.
It's not even go to bed.
Okay, I see a chat. I don't know how to do that. Thank you so much. Oh, so if anyone does have a question, I would invite you one at a time to unmute yourself and ask a question. Feel free. If we don't have any questions, we will let these ladies go and thank them. and then maybe continue on with talking about some of the other wines and things like that. So does anyone have any questions before? First of all, their wines are available to order straight to your home. There's no pressure, but I highly recommend it. And that's on the webpage, as well as you can always email me. They have a website, so lots of different ways to get in touch with them and get their wines. If you have any questions about the particular bottles, I've had all of them and can tell you more about the differences and things like that. And then the prices are also on my webpage as well. There's a form. So Chianti, like Champagne region, is France, is only from this part of Italy. Yes, that's correct. So that's the whole wine laws protect the different regions. So I can't make wine, in my basement and then label it as a Chianti Classico and try to sell it that way. That would be against the law and horrible. It would be horrible. So
one more that
exactly the same.
You to let people know more about that. If you are looking for the rooster, that is the symbol of Chianti Classico. So this means that is made in this part of Toscana. There is another appellation, also the OCG, that is just named Chianti and does not have the rooster. And it means that it cannot be made in this part of Toscana. So Chianti is a wider area that is outside the original territory that, Sally, you mentioned, that was defined in 1716.
Right, it's one of the other. So Tuscany has 11 DOCG zones. Chianti Classico is one. Chianti is a different one. It is a little tricky. And then there are many others like Brunello, Vino Nobile, some others like that. And then there are DOCs. There are, how many DOCs?
Many, about 30, 40 or
somewhere. So there are more DOC zones as well. And then, of course, you can also make table wine. So a farmer could make his own wine and keep it at his home, for his family and not sell it. That'd be considered table wine. Marianne and Mish, you had a question more about Super Tuscans. Are you wondering about theirs in particular or in general? He went away. I saw him leave. They do have a Super Tuscan. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your Super Tuscan? And then when they leave, I'll talk more about Super Tuscans in general.
Yes, of course. So the Super Tuscan, it's actually the official name in Italy is IGT wines. And IGT, as Sally was mentioning, they must be made in a specific area. But we are able to choose the type of grapes and also the aging timing. That means that we are, let's say, free to decide what we want to make on our wines. We have a Super Tuscan, the name is Inversus, the one I just showed you that is referred to our youngest boy. But the name is also, there's another meaning, that is because the wine is made with the opposite blend of Chianti Classico. So we have a 90% of Merlot and the 10% of Sangiovese. So it's a limited production, always small. The total production of the winery reaches about 55,000 bottles. That means quite small compared to many others that have many more bottles made. The average of Chianti Classico is about 300,000 bottles, and you can find those who make much less and those who can get to 4 or 5 millions of bottles. These are mostly the corporation, because we also have some big companies that deal with Chianti Classico. So the Casaloste Inversus, it's quite different from the Chianti Classicos because, of course, it offers a less percentage of Sangiovese, but Merlot gives a very special taste, very smooth, very round, full-bodied. So even a different approach, but this is because we want to make sure that we can offer a wider range on the wines. one more product we are used to make is extra virgin olive oil as well. So great quality. We have our olives handpicked, and it's a big job with a very small production, but all the wines and the olive oil are made with lots of love and passion.
Wonderful. Well, I have a few more questions over here that I think are more general, and so I will get to those. But yeah, I think that's all for you guys. Amelia, thank you so much. Thank you both for taking your time this evening to chat with us. It's so wonderful to see your faces again. I would be seeing them normally in a few weeks. So I'm sad that I can't be there. And actually, some of the people on here would have been seeing you this summer as well. So they will. They will soon enough. As soon as we can, we'll all come see you.
We are waiting for you. Yeah. And for their time they share with us.
Perfect.
Thank you. Grazie.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Okay, you guys can log off if you want. I will invite everyone else. We'll see how this goes. So you, Laura Lee, Lisa, Karen, hi guys. So really this is fun because I feel that you all should know each other. I love my clients and my friends, and those lines blur a lot. I think everyone would get along pretty well. So what we have today going forward, so I wanted to introduce you to Casaloste. As I'm figuring this whole wine club thing out, I didn't really have time to get you some of the smaller winemakers like Casaloste and like others who, you know, I'm going to be introducing you to and tasting, but I'm also going to taste with you some of the bottles that I could get you this time, and some of the bottles that we will be tasting that most people have, like the Brunello. A lot of people have Argiano. They will actually be tasting with us Saturday.
Oh, good.
Was about so the Nozzole that a lot of you have is still a Chianti Classico DOCG. So it's the same area. It's still the top of the pyramid, just like the
very top
wine that we were, the very top. And it's also a 2016 and also a Riserva, just like the wine that she was telling us specifically about at the beginning, her 2016 Riserva. So the Riservas are really, they came onto the market in 2019 from 2016 because of the requirement to age them 2 years before they're released to market. So those are kind of newer. A Riserva, like the ones you guys have in front of you, they really can be aged for a while. And they really do go better with food overall, because they have more tannin, more acid, and they beg for that. The acid makes your palate, it makes you salivate, makes you ready for food. And so Sangiovese does that a lot. It gets you ready. So I want to talk about the Nozzole. I have been emailing with their winemaker. He is excited. Oh, I should take a screenshot. Is it okay if I take a screenshot? I told him I would. I don't know how to do that. Yeah, everybody smile. And cheers, maybe. Look at this. Yay. Okay. I don't know how that'll go, but.
Everybody hold their bottle up at the same time and let you take a screenshot of that.
Yeah. Does everybody have their bottle?
Right there. Oh, yeah.
Take it again. Okay.
Oh, I guess I should hold it more nicely.
All right. Cheers. That's fun.
I love it.
Good idea, Brad.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's really fun about, and I'm gonna pop back to share my screen real quick because I want to show you where this is from in relation to the, go back. So here. All right. So we are still in, see, here's Chianti Classico, this area between Florence and Siena. And to give you an idea of distance, it's really only 40 miles from top to bottom. So you have 510 winemakers in this small little area. Here it is zoomed in. Okay. So Penzano, where Casaloste was, in this little area between Greve and Rada.
Yes.
It takes like exactly 6 minutes to drive from Florence to Penzano, to Casaloste. So Nozzole, the bottle that most of you have, is from right up here on the northern part, closer to Florence. And what we find here is a little bit hillier even. And this is Casaloste pictured right here. And it was also this picture. This I took on my last trip. Casaloste is right over here in this little pocket. So you see these hills start to open a little bit more as you get down to Montalcino and the Val d'Orcia, which many of you have stayed in or will stay in soon. Those are even more open and rolling hills, kind of what we think of like with the Gladiator movie, you know, when he has that dream that he's going home to his family. That was actually shot down in that area. So Nozzole up here is also a really, it's a very historic estate, at least. And their wine that they have, the 2016 Reserva, is actually only available in the United States. The winemaker was emailing me this morning, and I don't know why that is, but I want to find out. So this wine, like the Casaloste one, they've chosen to do a 95, no, theirs is 100% Sangiovese. This one's 100% Sangiovese.
Yeah, this one?
The Nozzole, yep. That's 100% Sangiovese, so they've chosen not to blend it. Their tasting notes, so this part is really fun for me. I want to bring my husband in to do this with me because without fail, I promise you, he would say it smells like grapes. It gets really cold, but he thinks it's funny.
Very.
So did anyone look at this little lexicon thing that I left on the page? So this is the fun part. Now, I had to memorize all these for one of my wine exams, and you shuffle through when you do a tasting, a blind tasting, you have to you get 1 point for every correct descriptor in every category out of like 20 that you do. So I had to memorize these. I've kind of forgotten them since. But what I do is I just keep this around. And when I open a bottle, I just go through it and say, all right, so let's look at, is the wine clear or hazy? It's clear. Mostly it's clear. Sometimes what you see if like a wine is not, if it hasn't been, what's the word? When you take the sediment out, sometimes you'll see particles and things at the bottom. Sometimes you can see what are called wine crystals that are just tartrates. They kind of form naturally with yeast and things in the barrel. But most of the time, the wine's going to be clear. So it's clear, but the intensity is, and I'm looking at the Nozzole, and what you want to do usually is just have a sheet of white paper that you hold it up against. So you tilt the wine glass at like a 45-degree angle, and you're looking through then the middle section of the glass. And if you can't really see through it, the wine is considered deep. And if the color pretty well holds true all the way to the edges, it's gonna be medium to deep. Sometimes you can get a wine that fades towards the edges and it fades to either clear, to even like a clear color. A lot of light white wines will do that. So I would say the Nozzole is probably a deep, clear, and then is it purple, ruby, garnet, or tawny? Does anyone have that sheet in front of them? You can turn on your audio. I want to chat now.
Are you really sure about that?
You guys, if I had to
Hi,
pick,
Sally. Oh, we get to talk now. Thank goodness. I've been so quiet here.
Oh, here's the
No,
Okay.
I really do have a question.
Yeah.
Sally, the one we're tasting, this one right now that we're discussing, compared to the one that Amelia had, what are the differences? Do you know?
so in the actual wine itself, are you saying
Yes.
flavors and?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the wine that Amelia gave us was, oh, now I have 3 glasses. It's over here. So she gave us 95% Sangiovese, and then only 5% of it was a mix of other wines. Otherwise, they age it for, I think she said a year. She was cutting out a little bit. I don't know if anyone heard her.
It was 12.
12 months in oak. And then that means, since Reserva has a minimum of 2 years aging, that means it spent another year aging in the bottle before they released it for sale. So this one from Notole is 100% Sangiovese. It spent 24 months in oak barrels and 3 months aging in the bottle before they sold it. So overall, they're very similar wines because, again, they're only about 20 miles apart. They experienced the same climate, the same temperatures, the same rainfall, and they follow the same overarching laws that control that DOCG area. So that's why I had Amelia today to talk about her wines. I wanted you to get to know them, but overall it's very similar to the one you have.
So if we're going to order, should we order a case of each?
Sure.
Just checking.
I vote yes. I vote yes. Yeah, absolutely. You know, so
We need 1 case of each. We'll email that to you though.
yeah, honestly, all the wines that I have in front of me, I also have another bottle that, and I don't have 3 bottles open. I do have this nifty little Coravin thing that allows me to pour tastings at a time. So I can go in, and as the wine ages, you know, if I don't want to open this all right now, I can just have a glass. And then as it's aging, I can figure out when, you know, in a year I can pour another sample, see if it's good yet. But most often what I will do, if Matt doesn't want to join me drinking, I will say, I'm just gonna have a glass of wine, and then I fill it to here using the Coravin. And he's like, why didn't you just open the bottle at that point? So I have 3 different wines in front of me. They're all 2016 Reserva Chianti Classicos. They're all a little bit different. So the Notole, really, if you want to take a second and geek out on those flavors with me, there is one overarching both scent and flavor in all these Chianti Classicos. Actually, there are probably 2. And I want to see what you all say about Notole before I tell you what I think. Do you have any of these like fruit or any vegetal, any of the oak flavors?
For fruit, I was saying plum
Mm-hmm.
and tobacco are the 2 that I kind of took away.
Yeah, and it changes. So I did a little teeny tiny tasting yesterday. It's changed today. The 3rd bottle I have is a Ricasoli, and they are a very historically important estate. There's a castle, and Barone Ricasoli was very influential in coming up with the recipe for Chianti wines, and he actually championed Sangiovese, which is now the most important grape in Tuscany. So I also have one of those because it was easy to get on wine.com. But does anyone else have a scent or a flavor that you?
Cherry.
Yeah. Me too.
I'm throwing out the herbaceous.
Herbaceous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bad student. Well, I'm a great student.
So cherry and plum are the overarching scents I get in all of these different wines. They come from north, central, and southern Chianti Classico. Ricasoli is at the very southern border of that zone. Nozzole, when I opened it yesterday, there is a word on here that I've used maybe once in the last 10 years to describe wines that like stuck out at me was farmyard. Did anybody know farm smell?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Hey. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. It's musty. It's a little musty.
Yeah, it's a little musty. It smells like a little grungy. Then as it opens up, I get more violet.
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 Violet?
Not violence, Rhonda. Violet.
Violet. And it's funny, so those are the notes that I made yesterday when I was tasting it, and then the winemaker, he emailed this morning specific notes for it, and your two notes are cherry and violet.
Wow.
Then as it goes,
Lisa's really smart. She picked the cherry.
I thought cherry was number one for me after the farmyard.
After the barnyard?
Musty barnyard.
It goes off.
Yeah.
It goes away.
Yeah.
You order like 12 to 20 bottles of.
Sorry, Emily?
Which wine did you mention that you ordered 12 to 24 bottles at a time of? Was it
No, it's a Casaloste. So she was showing us a little pyramid after the fact on that sheet of paper. So the Chianti Classico DOCG already covers the zone. Chianti Classico said, we have 3 different levels of our wine we're going to introduce. One is so that's a young wine. It's probably been aged for a couple months in barrel, maybe a year total, and they release it. That's the one that's kind of my everyday, like my go-to bottle that we keep around. We have a lot of. And then they have a Reserva, which is the one she was talking about today. I asked her to do that one specifically because you all have a Reserva in front of you. And then they have a Super Tuscan and IGT. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Super Tuscan. I think, Mish, you were asking about this too. So really, Super Tuscan is a marketing term. So what happened was 1963, the government comes up and says, we're going to have these wine laws. There's DOCG, DOC, table wine. But what was happening, particularly in Bulgari on the Tuscan coast, was that this winemaker came in and he brought French grapes like Cabernet, Merlot, Cab Franc, and he started growing them in this area in Tuscany and found out that they did spectacularly, that he made these amazing wines. But because of the wine laws, they were technically classified as table wines. Not really fair. Didn't represent the quality or, you know, the time that it took, the precision to make the wines. They aged for years. That's very expensive. So they came together, winemakers came together and asked and won in 1992. The government introduced that IGT level, so inserted that between DOC and the table wine. And that level says you can use more than just Sangiovese, Canaiolo, Colorino. Canaiolo and Colorino are indigenous grapes to Tuscany. So you can use more than those. You can use Syrah, you can use Merlot, and you can play with blends. That category says the wine must be grown and made here. But it really allows you a lot more flexibility in terms of recipes and things like that. So Super Tuscan was a term for these wines like Sassicaia, Ornellaia, Tignanello, some of the most important wines and most expensive wines in Italy originally had to be classified as table wines, but then they could be, after 1992, they fell into the IGT category. Again, that pyramid doesn't technically represent quality. You can find a bad Chianti Classico or one that you just don't like and a great IGT. So it's more, although it does give you some idea, right? You know that up at the top of the pyramid, the DOCG, there's a lot of care and attention and time and money that went into it. So those winemakers want that to be good. But you can play around. So the DOCG applies to a zone, right? So Chianti Classico is the zone. Emilia is in that zone. Nozzole is in that zone. If those winemakers choose to, they can follow the recipe, they can follow the law, they can age it, Caroline, and they can age it according to requirements. And then if they do all that, the wine gets the DOCG stamp. If they don't want to, they don't have to. Even if they're in Chianti Classico, they can make a 50% Merlot and 50% Cabernet, and it can be darn good, but they have to call it an IGT or a Super Tuscan. So Super Tuscan is a marketing term. Technically, it falls under the IGT category. If that makes more sense. So it's a category that allows them a little more flexibility, some room to innovate and play with different things. Yeah. Oh. What else? Ask other questions. I did want to say, I don't want to take up too much time. I feel like people have to stay. I want to say that on Saturday, when we do Brunello, we will also do Vino Nobile. I'll talk about Vino Nobile and Vin Santo at that time, since it's a Saturday afternoon. I do have some other winemakers who I'm talking to still about